Right, so let's move on to a little bit of physical anatomy now. I'm not going to dwell on this too long, but the slides are there, so you can read these back and learn this if you choose to. So you can learn about the muscle groups, so you know what is what. It's going to help you to have at least a very basic understanding of muscular anatomy and physiology if you want to improve exercising and make better decisions and better exercise choices. But looking at this very quickly, so the image on the left there is the posterior view, so it's the back. So you can see, like, if you look at, there's that kind of triangular shaped muscle just below the shoulders. So it's quite a big, long triangular shaped or V-shaped muscle that goes down into that white fascia bit as it disappears down onto the I was going to say pubic bone, it's not the pubic bone, onto the coccyx. So that's the latissimus dorsi. It's the largest muscle in the upper body, and that is it's one of many core muscles, but it's the largest muscle on your back. It's often referred to as the mid-back muscles, along with the rhomboids, which are the kind of rhombus-shaped group of muscles that stretch from the back of the neck to the top of the shoulder, and then from the top of the shoulder down to the middle of the spine. And then on the right hand side you've got the anterior view, which shows you your rectus and transverse abdominis and your external and internal obliques, which are the muscles basically that make up your six-pack. And that's just another chart that shows you the muscular systems. Again, I've just put that in so that you can refer back to that if you wish. So this is an interesting theory, the joint by joint concept by Mike Boyle. So if you look at the left hand side there, the red column are the stable joints, and on the right hand side the blue column are the mobile joints. So the idea is that the joints in the body alternate from stable to mobile, and that doesn't mean that the joints shouldn't move, the stable joints. It means that they should be able to stabilise while the mobile joints are moving. So how that works in relation to the lower back is that if you look at the diagram there, the lower back is a big red blob there over the pelvis and the lower lumbar. So that should be a stable joint. That joint should be able to stabilise and resist movement. Then if you look at the hip, so there's a blue circle next to it by the ball socket, that should be a mobile joint. So the hip should be able to move freely. And then if you look at the rib cage, that's the mid-spine area or thoracic spine, that should be a mobile joint. What happens if a mobile joint becomes stiff and immobile? Then a stable joint becomes lax and overworked. So in the case of the lower back, it's likely that either of those two or both of the hips and the mid-spine have become stiff and they don't move optimally through their full range of movement, and with the hips in particular, they're probably not generating power. There's a lack of strength there as well as a lack of mobility, and therefore the lower back has to pick up the slack. So you end up rotating, flexing and extending the lower back a lot more to compensate for stiffness in the mid-spine and the hips. One of the reasons that you may develop stiffness in some of those areas will be postures that you assume throughout the day. Now, when we look at the research, there's not a very strong correlation between so-called bad posture and pain. Some people have bad posture and they have pain, some people have bad posture and they have no pain. So we can't make that a causative correlation. It's correlation rather than causation. However, there are other things that inform posture. So for example, it's because posture is largely volitional. It's kind of a choice. It's usually a subconscious choice, but if you're in certain postures for long periods of the day, it's possible, and you're not using the joints and the muscles in certain parts of the body, then you're going to create stiffness in those areas. So although directly the posture might not be the cause of the pain, there may be a knock-on effect in some respects that certain parts of the body have become weak or lengthened or tight or short or stiff or whatever, and that affects the quality of your overall movement and creates compensation when you're moving or exercising, that then leads to developing pain because certain muscles are becoming overworked or they've just become weak. So if you look at the picture there, like sitting is a pretty big one. If you think about it, if you're slouched over a computer all the time, then your mid-back, so if you look on the arrow pointing to the upper spine there, or the middle part of the spine, it says elongated, inactive and weak upper back muscles with a T-spine curvature. So it might not necessarily be the curvature itself that's causing the issue, but being static in that posture for long periods of time teaches your body to be in that posture, so it will resist movement out of that posture. It's the same as sitting. If you're sat in a sitting position for long periods of time and you never do anything to change or improve that range of motion, then you're going to lose that. So, you know, a lot of people can't squat to depth because they have stiffness in their ankles and their hips, and the longer you adopt sitting postures for, and I don't just mean like sitting for hours on end, I mean years and years of sitting for hours on end without then going and doing some kind of exercise or activity that puts you in different postures and positions, like exercising in the gym, for example, then your body's going to get used to moving within a certain limited range of motion and will lose the ability to effectively move in a greater range of motion. So posture, not a causative cause of pain, but there is a correlation there, and there are lots of other factors that, you know, it's just worth being aware of your alignment. You know, if you're sitting slouched over a computer all the time, then just take some time to, you know, set an alarm every 30 minutes or every hour just to do a couple of stretches and move and get out of that position and put yourself into other positions. It's going to be good for you, because movement at the end of the day is better than being static and sedentary. So here's an example of what a neutral standing posture might look like, and even actually when you look at this, you can see my lower back has a slight curvature there. My pelvis is slightly tilted forward, so even though that's a neutral posture for me, that wouldn't necessarily be referred to as a neutral spine, but you know, everybody is different and everybody's body is different. So what is neutral for one might not necessarily be neutral for another. So everybody's going to look slightly different, but the main thing we're looking at here is the alignment. And so if you look at the ear, so looking at the picture on the left, my ear, shoulder, hip and knee are all pretty much stacked on top of each other. That's ideal. You're not going to be like that all the time. You don't have to walk around the streets like Frankenstein's monster or the Mummy or something like that. But ideally, you will want to be in that neutral position with your chin slightly tucked in, so there's length at the back of the neck. The ear is over the shoulder. Your shoulders are back and down, not hunched up by your ears. And that your hips are in a more or less neutral alignment when you're standing. And then looking at it front on, if you've ever seen the image of the Verudian man, the guy with all the arms standing inside the circle, he's got incredibly long arms and very short legs, but that's kind of what your posture should look like. So if you're looking at the picture on the right here, it says neutral front, you can see again, chin in, shoulders back and down. You can see the palms of my hands rather than the backs of my hands. With most people, you'll see the backs of the hands, and everything's roughly lined up on top of each other. But this is an example of a very common posture that you see in a lot of people, particularly people who spend large periods of the day sat at a desk slumped over a computer or a steering wheel or something like that. This is called kyphosis. So the mid-spine has a subtle amount of curvature in it called a kyphotic curve. And with this posture, you can see that my back and shoulders are very hunched and rounded, or stooped. Some people call it a stoop. So that is hyperkyphosis. You can see how rounded the backs of my shoulders are. And then if you look at my neck and my ear isn't over my shoulder, it's in front of my shoulder, and my chin is jutting forward. So my head now effectively weighs 2 or 3 times as much, and that puts more strain on the neck. So that could be a reason or a contributing factor to some people who get a lot of chronic neck pain. And when you look front on, you can see how internally rotated my shoulders are. You can see the backs of my hands. I'm kind of lurching forward with a very shallow concave chest. That's going to affect your breathing. You should be able to breathe into your diaphragm, not just breathing into the top of your chest. If you've got a concave, hollow chest, you're probably breathing into your chest. You probably never use your core muscles to expand and draw that breath down into your abdomen like you should. And what does that look like? I look a little bit sad. Maybe I look a little bit stressed or anxious, because that's the kind of protective posture that you would adopt when you're stressed. So if you're walking around the streets in that kind of posture, that signals your brain that you're under threat, and your brain will produce, or your mind, your hormone endocrine system will produce more stress hormones like cortisol, which in itself could then increase inflammation, and it could increase stressful and anxious thinking, and then that could be part of that neuromatrix, those inputs that go into that spinning sphere and then spit out the other side as outputs such as pain, catastrophizing, and a chronic pain experience. So although posture on a physical or biological level might not necessarily directly cause back pain, it may do on a neurological or emotional psychological level. So remember, the pain mechanism, the model is a biopsychosocial. So posture may, although it's physical in nature, it might not be physical in terms of contribution to pain, but there may be a neurological element to it. And this one is probably the most common posture that you'll see. If you watch people standing, you see this a lot. They kind of often, I'm not doing it here in the picture, but often you'll see the knees are hyperextended here, and the hips jut forward, and then the back sways back, and then the head rocks forward to keep your weight centralized. So it's called sway back. It's the most common posture. I've said dysfunction. I don't like to use the word dysfunction too much. Most people have some degree of this. My own posture is a mild sway back. My normal posture when I'm not trying to stand in a neutral position like in the earlier picture. And the worse the sway back is, the more potentially indicative that could be of weak core muscles, weak mid and long mid back muscles, weak or tight hip flexors. There's potential there to be putting compressive loads, additional compressive loads on the discs in the lumbar spine. Again, hollow chest and dysfunctional breathing, forward head posture, so maybe neck pain as well. So, as I say, everyone's posture is different. Not every posture is going to directly cause pain, but just being aware of your posture and your alignment, particularly when you're moving. It's just, I find it's good practice to be mindful in these situations. Be mindful, think about your alignment, and try and correct it a little bit where you can. So if your shoulders are shrugging, catch yourself doing it and relax your shoulders, little things like that. And again, daily habits, does this posture ring any bells? I think we're going to see entire generations growing up with like a hinge at the base of their neck. And again, posture is posture, and it might not be causing pain, but what you will get is if you look at the base of my neck in this image here, you see how rounded my shoulders are. So you can see where the necklace is at the base of the neck there. Some people develop what's often referred to as a Dauger's hump. So it's just like a fatty deposit that forms there, and it just doesn't look very nice. And I'm seeing this more and more in young people because they're adopting this kind of posture. Even when they're not standing or walking around staring at the phone, they're sitting down staring at the phone, so the head's forever bowed down. And then it just looks unpleasant. And aesthetics don't have an effect on pain, but it will have an effect on your body image, and that again could have an effect on the neurological, emotional side of your pain experience. So just be mindful of your posture. Think about bringing everything back to neutral, back to center.